Greetings. Welcome to this episode of Everyday Enchantment. I am your host, Stacey and I can't wait to dive into this guest interview with Sarah Seidelmann. So, Sarah is one of the most incredible human beings. I just want to put it out there right now. When I started my own journey of becoming a life coach and just learning what life coaches were and just these beautiful voices in the world, Sarah was one that we hadn't even met before. We hadn't even spoken, but her words resonated. She has several books. She has a beautiful deck of cards. She is a channeler of the animal mother nature world. She's a shamanic mentor. So she just is this beautiful voice connecting us back, not only to ourselves, but to the planet at large and this beautiful motherly divine energy that I just always feel comforted and like there's laughter in your work and words. So I can just remember, I think one of the first things I ever downloaded, I think you had like a PDF of like Alice the Elephant at one point. I put it in a special book and I still look at it. This is it has to be going on 7 or 8 years ago. But that's how important your work was to me, especially as I was exploring my own kind of role and voice in the world. You just became this beautiful mentor to me. So if you haven't checked out any of Sarah's books, I highly recommend it. And you have a new novel out called Where the Deer Dream, which people are calling enchanting. Oh, of course. I'm sure if we are looking in the dictionary for enchantment, your photo is there.
You're so kind. I do love that word.
Right? Magic, enchantment, all of the synchronicities of life. So tell us a little bit. I mean, whatever you want to share a little bit more about you and kind of, how you've come to this place right here, right now.
Yes, and I just want to presence the fact that I have, ever since I've been following you, I've just been so amazed at how you just show up and just keep showing up. And it's a rare quality in this wild world, somebody who just keeps showing up and showing all so much love and encouragement and inspiration. And yeah, that's why I had you on my podcast. I don't know when that was, like a few years ago. So anyways,
Totally.
thank you so much. So yeah, I kind of stumbled into this wild path of like spirit like 12 years ago or so approximately. I was in my medical practice. I was kind of slowly heading into this place, this downward slow spiral into feeling like not engaged at work. It
Mhm.
wasn't like I was really clear what was going on, but I was just less and less fascinated with what I was doing, which sounds very like spoiled or something, but it wasn't something I could choose, believe me, because I was like, I really would prefer to stay fascinated with this work so I can just have my perfect life work out in the
Mhm.
perfect manner in which I had planned it to work out. But that wasn't the plan. It was like there was a plot twist. And so I ended up taking a sabbatical from medicine. And the idea was like do some coach training because I had gotten some life coaching and it had helped me at least find some more peace at work. So I thought, well, maybe I could learn about life coaching. And I did. And then I stumbled into this idea. I read Ted Andrews' book, Animal Speak,
Love.
and it just like fell off the shelf into my hands. Not exactly, but it was like right next to Martha Beck's books, and she, is a
I
common
get
theme.
it.
I was like, what's this guy saying? There are messages from animals that can help you. I'm like, this sounds like cracked up, like what is this? Can't be possibly true. But I was like, well, nobody's watching me, so I'm just gonna like buy this and read it. And I found it to be like I started to apply some of the principles in the book, and I was like, wow, this grasshopper has taught me more this week than I could have figured out in months. And I just like it was just amazing. Like all these beasties started to really show me how to be and how that like life, there's just this other element that was operating that I wasn't familiar with, or I guess I probably was aware of it as a child and then slowly just stopped knowing what that was. And so the animals just kind of reopen that doorway to enchantment and magic and mystery, like to the great mystery. Yeah.
That's a really good point. The great mystery and that mysticism that's all shrouded. I think, and tell me what you think about this. I think we, to some extent, or maybe to larger extent, we play with that when we're young, and then somehow we compartmentalize that and put it away, put it on a shelf. It's not for adults. And I don't know. I have a similar thing. When I started kind of reconnecting with that, I was like, oh, Like my
Yeah.
whole like insides lit up from the inside out.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think as you get out and you become an adult and you start to bear the responsibilities that we all do, we take on these roles, whatever they may be, or we go to school and learn a trade. And but then, maybe you add other responsibilities on top of that, and pretty soon, yeah, all you're doing is all these responsibilities and you've forgotten why why you're here in the first place. And so then, yeah, something has to happen to, I don't know. I think, yeah, my opinion is like, yeah, the great mystery just kind of goes, you know what? It's time for this person to like have a new awakening. And so then you find yourself studying wild beasties, even though you're supposed to be back at the hospital looking in your microscope.
I
Um,
think of it like, in for those that are listening that know Joseph Campbell's like hero's journey and the archetype of that, always think about it like this is just my own take on it. Like in your 20s, the hero's journey calls you up like, hey, and you're like, hey, I'm having a good time right now. Call me back. Click.
yeah,
And then in your 30s, hey, remember me? I want to like lighten up your soul and remind you about playing and all of the things. And you're like, maybe, but I don't know. And I always think about it just like as this like nudge that at some point, and I love the way you said plot twist, right? Almost this plot twist that we get where we've kind of already planned out our lives, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, this is not going the way. That to me, it's almost like I don't know what's bigger than the phone call, but the plot twist then typically gets our attention and we start to maybe ask questions that we hadn't asked or look at things in a different way or even just look at our lives from a different lens than the like be responsible, do grown-up things, take care of, X, Y, and Z kind of thing.
totally. Or take on something that you don't think you're capable. I mean, I when I
Mm.
was in my 20s, I kind of got that. I refused the call. I got the sense in medical school that there was something very wrong with the system and the way we were like treating
Mm.
people. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I could figure out how to help this thing, I would, but there's no way. I don't know how, I don't know what I'm doing. And so that actually impacted what I chose as a specialty and everything. Cause I was like, oh, it's a hard no. Like I see the problem, but I can't help you with that right now. I've got to do something. I've got to take this other path that's easier or more known.
Yeah.
Um,
So I really, first of all, I do want to just nod to your book of beasties because that's on my like nightstand, bedside office. That book goes everywhere I go. And I think almost everybody who's ever been coached by me or been in my world probably also has that book because it is such if somebody's listening and they're like, I don't know how to do that, that is such a great place to begin or just to continue to deepen your exploration. Because again, there is this whole world that wants to communicate and play with us and delight us. And are we, a lot of times I think we get nervous coming from that kind of the adult world or whatever we want to call that to step into this place. So I have to put a little shout out there to you.
yeah, it's like
I
that
highly recommend it.
whole world that's out there. It's like, yeah. And after reading Ted Andrews' book, I was like, I like this book. And then but I was like, when you're in that place of feeling so lost, like if you're suffering and you've just had something major happen to you, or maybe you're just recovering from this whole pandemic that's been going on, and you're like, what is happening to me? My whole life is upside down. And
Mhm.
I think it's such a scary place to be. And I wanted to write a book that really felt inspiring and uplifting and maybe some lightheartedness to it
Mhm.
as well, because I feel like, yeah, when you're in that place, at least when I was in that place, I was like, I do not need anything more dark or heavy-handed right now. I need something sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but powerful. And I think that's what the animals can really show us things. And also
Mhm.
restore our sense of humor because
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a deck that I use, and there's a comic archetype that comes through. And I don't know, it's one of Kim Kranz's decks. I don't know if you
yeah,
know that deck.
yes.
It's interesting because the message of that card, the comic is like humor is one of these higher frequencies, right? Really here to help us navigate. And I think again, at least for me, I'd be like, oh, I need to get serious rather than I need to laugh more. Like that would have been my nudge 15 years ago. That's not going to help me. And yet now I know the more I laugh and play and really do find that there's such a breadcrumb trail, right? To really getting clarity when we can like lighten it up, loosen it up, whatever, whatever verb we want to use around that. That has helped me tremendously, especially with, again, dark places.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful quality of a healer, coach, helper. I know, like a few years ago, I went to the Amazon to study plant medicine with a renowned shaman, and we were all just feeling so vulnerable and so terrified. And so, I mean, being in the jungle is like, I don't even know how to explain it, but it feels very overwhelming and you feel very ill-equipped to handle whatever is about to happen to you. And I remember we're all just like waiting him to show up at our little house out in the jungle and give us whatever we were going to have to do or drink or take next. And he would always like look very serious and he would hand us like the next potion we were going to drink. And then he'd go, later we can go to the discotheque, okay? It was like, oh my God. Like you're relieved, but it's like, is this guy for real? And it's such a great sense of humor. And I think that's the best.
I love it.
You have to, because it's that, otherwise it just gets so heavy.
It does. It does. And right now, to your point about kind of navigating through the pandemic and so many other things, where can we feel or feel the lightness to, the energies here as well? And it leads me into art and creativity, because I've been participating in lots of new offerings that you've been doing the last couple of years, where I love how you're using, and you can tell me in your own words if I've gotten this wrong, but I love how you're using creativity as a teacher, right? Creativity as a guide, creativity. The more creative I've been, and it's funny, when I signed up for your program last year, I was like, I'm just going to try this. I'm just going to see what happens, right? I didn't put a lot of expectations on myself. I just wanted to show up for myself for 90 days, and we'll talk about what I'm talking about in a second. But I wanted to just show up and see what happened. And I think to your point around at the beginning, it's like showing up. I've always thought like, hey, if you just show up, like that's a huge part of just, I say winning in life, and not that there's losing, but like you just keep going and do that. But it cracked me open in a lot of ways were unexpected for me. And I love to be artistic. I love to be creative. And having the way you set it up without any judgment from other people, and this was like really about exploring your own relationship with, however you express yourself. Because I think a lot of people too would be listening and say, because I've heard this before, I'm not creative, I'm not an artist. And I will be curious what you have to say. I have opinions on that, but I will be really curious what you have to say about that as a beautiful artist in addition to a writer and shamanic, all the things. Your art it just speaks right directly to my soul every time I see it.
Thank you so much. Well, I think we're all creative. And for me, I think I've struggled with that label. Like I know 10 years ago when I was on that path, leaving medicine, I had to post this. It got ridiculous. I finally had to post this sign in my creativity area. It said, just be an artist, because it was like, stop trying to think, are you an artist or can you do this or what? Just do it, And it was so funny because one night my husband, I made this beautiful glittery sign. It was so fabulous. And my husband comes down, he goes, just be an artist. He goes, oh, you talking about like gluing pasta and baked like beans onto the stuff? I did that when I was a kid. And I was like, oh my God, he didn't get it at all. It was so funny. But what I learned a couple of years ago, I was working on some addictive behavior I had. It had to do with food, like eating to escape painful situations or painful feelings I didn't want to feel. Mm-hmm. And when I really dug deep into that, this part of me that wanted to indulge all the time, whether it was cocktails, sugar, whatever it was, she was always like, oh, sweetie, you've had a hard day, blah, 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 have this. But when I talked to her, I was like, if you didn't have to do that job, because I'd really prefer you didn't, because I don't feel good when I do those things anymore. I used to, but not so much anymore. And she's like, I was like, well, what'd you rather do? If you didn't want to do that, you have to be in charge of something else. She's like, I would like to be like creative director. I want to dress up. I want to wear different outfits. I want to be like stylish. And I was like, really? And I realized, oh, okay. So as I started to like let myself dress up and, wear strawberry earrings or whatever, like express myself that way, she started to quiet down and she started to trust me and stop saying things like, hey, let's have a dirty martini. That was a great, whatever. The day's been long. Let's have some fun. And yeah, the more I allow myself, I feel like expressing yourselves creatively is the opposite of addiction. Like we all have that
Mm,
sometimes, like you had a long day and sometimes it's fine to go watch some Netflix, right? Like it's like,
absolutely.
but we know when we go and sit and stream like 7 episodes of like Schitt's Creek and we feel like crap while we're doing it and after, because we know there was something else that would have been more nourishing for us, whether it was just going to bed or whether it
Absolutely.
was doing some yoga or calling that friend you were kind of scared to call because whatever, you're afraid they don't want to be with you. I don't know. So yeah, I'm trying to give some. So it's like,
Yeah, anything, fill in the blank, whatever that is.
totally.
Absolutely.
So we're shopping, we're drinking, we're eating, we're
Mhm.
escaping in some way. And when we're being creative, even if it's challenging, it's like we're here, we're showing up. And that's when I think spirit can get a hold of you. And it's like I see it now as like praying. I mean, like whether you're
Mhm.
singing, you're painting, you're making collages, writing poems. And there's so many fun, simple things you can do. You're in the present moment, and that's where you can really influence and have this beautiful quality of peace that you can spread in the world and make that the lake that we're all in or the ocean a little calmer, because right now Lord knows we could use some calming because
True.
she's rough out there. And
It's
yeah.
true. You know what's interesting? This might be a little digression, but I read recently, I I think I read it, or maybe it came to me. So if somebody said this somewhere, forgive me if I'm not attributing the source correctly, but that there's a lot of art that through this bumpy space that we're all on the planet right now, like the best art is yet to be made. And I was like, whoa. And just the because I think sometimes when we look back at art, right, we have these beautiful art museums and all these, all these places where we have very famous, different period, all of it. And I always think like, well, I could never, do that or that. But that quote, when I read it or heard it or whatever happened, I was like, it it gave me possibility, not to say that it's going to be me, but that there is this element to your point of like being an artist, which we like again just claim it, own it, is living. So
Yeah.
much of what we've done the last couple of years has just been surviving and navigating things in ways that are not in our nature. That to me, just like there's something I want to like go and like do finger painting again, right? Like the senses, touch things, make it messy, let it just be. Am I having fun? Am I connecting? And you're right. I know so many people, the more they allow themselves that space, the more they also find it, to your point, in terms of like vitality and just your quality of your life, it affects all these other places in
Yeah.
your life in the best ways. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
art as enchantment, right? It's alive and well. And I think that I'm curious, how do we make space for it? How do we get in touch with that if we feel like, okay, well, I did that a long time ago, or I don't have time? What would you say to somebody who is on the fence about playing with art?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I'm really into, because I watched people do this for years before I did one, is the idea of a 100-day project, or you could do a 30-day project if you'd like, but where you just set aside like 15 minutes, no more. And we all can find 15 minutes. You can all like, not watch that episode of Schitt's Creek or whatever it is, like there's something we can make that time.
Truth.
And we pick some kind of project. Like one thing I'm super into right now is I watched a David Bowie video and they were asking about how he writes songs. And
Mm,
David Bowie, what he did is he took pieces of writing that he really liked that other artists made,
mhm.
and he printed them out on paper. And then he took a scissor and cut all the words up and made a big pile of words. And then using the vocabulary of these pieces of writing that he absolutely loved, he generated new lines of prose to become his songwriting. And he's not the first person to do that. There are other people too, but I was just like,
so cool. I didn't know that.
So I took some Anne Lamott writing because I freaking love Anne Lamott. And then I took Hafiz poetry, some Sufi poets that I love. And I just clipped them all up and then I just started putting words together. And it's so fun because I don't consider myself a poet, but it's amazing as you start working with these words you already kind of love and you already have some resonance with. It's very generative too, because it's not like sitting down to a blank piece of paper, which can be very intimidating, going, I'm going to write my first poem, and it's like
3 days later. Or the house has never been, this is my thing. The house is never cleaner when I'm trying to avoid something else.
Yes. Yeah. If you find yourself cleaning too much, be afraid.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
So
it's a red flag for me.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I have to clean at the end of a project, and that's therapeutic because the house has become really messy. But yeah, sometimes it can be avoidance. But another idea somebody had was she took a bunch of paint chips from Home Depot, clipped them up, put them in a bag, and every day she drew out one paint chip. She looked at the color, she looked at the name of the color, and then she wrote something a self-reflection, one paragraph, like 3 or 4 lines. That's it. And she just did that for 100 days. And you might be thinking, well, like, who cares? It's just some paint chips. Like, what does it matter? But you're going to learn something about yourself. You're going to learn something about what it is that's flowing through you. And if you decide to share this with other people, like the way we do in this 100-day project that we're going to be doing coming up this summer, there's something about it, like sharing with other people is in particular powerful, especially if you feel safe about it. I don't recommend showing your vulnerable pieces to people who are not very friendly or whatever, aren't open to that kind of stuff. But like this weekend, they just had a conversation with a friend. She's like, when you posted that poem, I was like thinking this, but I wasn't sure what you were thinking. And we had this really deep conversation about what I thought it meant and what she thought it meant, which were completely different things, but it was really fascinating. So it causes a lot of self-reflection and connection with other people if you allow it. And that's what life's all about, really. It's just self-reflecting and connecting and creating. And
it reminds me of that quote by him that said, don't die with the music still left inside of you.
Yes.
And I think for like, again, when I read that years ago, I was like, whoa, like that was there was impact to that little sentence that was like, ooh, what is this music? And maybe it's not music, maybe it's poetry, whatever that is. But we each have this unique gift, I believe, to be in the world and share whatever that is. There's nobody going to have it exactly the way you have it, Sarah, the way I have it. And the more we discover or we are curious about it and explore it, and again, we ditch a lot of the rules about what we think, because I think also too, because most of us went through general or traditional school, right? We learn there's a right way and a wrong way. So I think a lot of times when you come to art, to your point, a blank page can be super overwhelming, or like, how do I get started? Because there has been this kind of training we've all had at some point that says, there's an expert or somebody that knows better. But that's why I love that quote, because it's like, no, nobody knows better. Whatever that tune is you have, nobody knows how to sing it, play it, share it, be it like you.
Yeah, you have your own unique frequency. I was just at a ceremony last weekend, and it was so beautiful because in that it's a very community driven thing when everybody offers a song, or many people, not everybody, but it's always exciting when a person who's never offered a song offers a song, because first of all, you get to hear their frequency. And it's like, the natural tendency is to compare ourselves and go, oh, well, this person's really good at it. They're an amazing musician, or they're like exceptional guitar player, or whatever it is. But then what you start to realize is that everybody is so unique, and there's nothing better than hearing somebody just like own it, like just howl their song, whatever it is. It's just like, it's amazing. And like you said, this is another thing. Like you said, nobody else can sing like that. And one of my art teachers, Aviva Gold, says, we are not here to judge the art. That's none of our business. Our business is to let it out. Like, let our song be sung, play our thing, write our poem, do whatever it is, because it's coming from something much greater than ourselves, and it's none of our business. We just have to get out of the way and let it out, let it come out.
I love that. And I think tell me about this. This is my experience when I did the 100-day project with you last year, is in order for it to come out for me, I wanted to be in a safe place. I knew I wanted accountability. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
never a big piece of joining your program last year, was this desire for me to say, okay, I'm going to join this as a commitment. Not that you were saying, Stacey, you didn't post it. It wasn't like, it
Right.
wasn't that, but just it was my intention really became form when I said, I am going to do this.
Yeah.
And creating that safe place. And it was so, I thought, do I need that? I did ask myself, do I need the place? Because I could do this, for myself. This is what I got. That was probably not, it was like a bonus result. I wasn't expecting it. Watching everybody else's evolution, first
Mhm.
of all, it inspired it. What I didn't really spend, now maybe there were moments I was like, wow, I don't have that. But I really never felt like compare and despair, as we would call it. I really was like, wow, because there was song, there was just so many different things, really simple things, just everybody had their own flavor. And it, like, being in a community like that really gave me permission to explore my own things. And so I know I wouldn't have gotten that same experience without being in a place where I felt infinitely safe and held the entire time, which not everybody can create that. So I definitely want to acknowledge you for that. That is a gift and a superpower, to be able to create community that does feel safe for people to be in and to be seen in. Because I think there's also, again, we've talked about it already, that fear of that holds us, that can really hold us back sometimes, when maybe we've been feeling it for, like, that inkling or whatever it is, that nudge, for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I received that. And thank you so much. I mean, that's my goal, is to have it feel safe. And I find when those projects are going, like, I get so excited in the morning to go on Facebook. Normally, I'm not super excited. I mean, I get excited to go on Facebook and connect with people. I'm pretty outgoing that way. But seeing what people have posted, their work, I mean, it is so inspiring. You're just like, wow, wow. And they keep doing it. Like, there was a woman who composed a new song every day on
Impressive.
her computer, and they weren't super long and complex, but it was like, holy crap, she's doing this. And like, you start to, another thing that's really neat that happens is, we all have an inner critic. Some of ours are louder. I know in my last year when I started out, I was learning how to do something on an iPad, which I know you did some
I
iPad.
loved it. I totally adopted it. It was
And
the best thing I ever discovered last year.
isn't it so fun? But
Oh,
my inner critic was like, "You don't know what you're doing. These are terrible. You're gonna." And then it was like, when it ran out of that idea, then it was like, "Well, you're never gonna be able to really get these polished. They're just blah blah blah." I mean, it was just. But after you keep doing it, it's kind of like after 30 or 40 days, that voice quiets, because you're just like, "Yeah, yeah, I know. This is terrible. This is okay." But I just, there's something that happens to you, and you realize you'll never run out of ideas. The ideas just keep coming. Like, that divine source is just like, here, and another and another and another. And then one day you wake up and maybe you like make something that you actually really like. And that is a very special day when that happens, because it doesn't happen every day, but if we keep at it, it's so fun.
and I think, right, it kind of mirrors the whole journey of life. We're going to have all these experiences, throughout our entire life, and some are going to stand out and some are going to draw our attention more. But it kind of goes back to what you said at the beginning. Just keep showing up and being willing to be in the mystery, because there's so much fun and play there. And to your point also, too, peace. When we come back in, that creative process for me is such a peaceful place, because I'm not doing anything else. I'm just being really, really present. And I think we've all lived in a world where, when you talked earlier about, like, addictive, like, behaviors, I always thought of addiction as being disconnection from ourselves, right? We've disconnected in some way or we're trying to disconnect in some way. So it brings us back to ourselves. And I think art can be really healing that way, because there's parts of us that haven't felt as comfortable to acknowledge or be with or what have you. And then I don't know, things just, to your point, the longer I was a little nervous last year, it's like, oh, 100 days. But I was intrigued too. And I think there is something to that time capsule, like not just 30 days, that the longer you stay in it, it's like when I used to run, like a certain point, you just got into a groove,
Right.
right? You're the whole first however long I wasn't a long distance runner, but the first couple miles, why are you doing this? When are we stopping? Blah, blah, like that voice is so loud, 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 loud. And then you just kind of get to a place where all of that just fades away. And that is, to your point, I think, where spirit and whatever we call that really then has a place to show up and talk with us and commune with us in ways that, I mean, there's the recipe for enchantment right there.
Totally. And that enchantment, like that word, I really fell in love with that word through Liz Gilbert's book, Big Magic. And I remember I went to a workshop she did, and she talked about like writing yourself a letter from your enchantment. I remember thinking, this is the most fun letter I've ever written. And it's like, we need more of that. I mean, that's what our soul is really here to douse ourselves in those things that maybe in childhood, well, not everybody's childhood, I realize, but many of us knew how to connect with an enchantment then. And oh boy, do we need it now.
I totally agree. Okay, so let's talk about this program that we've been talking about, because you're about to unveil it again for the summer. So let's get all the juicy details if people are interested in signing up.
Yeah, it's called Creative Soul Retrieval, and you can find it at my website at followyourfeelgood.com under the events. And I'm sure I'll send Stacey a link so she can post it. And yeah, we're going to have one prep class May 11th, but it'll be recorded. So if you can't be there, just to help you figure out what your project is and to design a project that will help you be successful with it, to really do it. And then we'll start June 1st posting our art or whatever we're doing, whether it's music.
I love it. Whatever you want, whatever's in your heart, as Dr. Wayne Dyer would say, whatever that is, that music, literal or more metaphorical, whatever that is. Okay, Sarah, I got one last question for you as we wrap, and thank you, because it's always a pleasure to be, like, I just feel like the energy when you are live with me is just, I get this beautiful kick of magic. So thank you. I always ask, what's the one thing, if we meandered through a lot of things, if you could leave our listeners with just, if they were just going to pull one thread and maybe do something or think about something, what would you want them to really hold on to from this conversation? Or from your work? It doesn't necessarily
I would say, like, just create some time for yourself. Find a little chunk of time, an afternoon, a day, just to set aside for yourself to explore what does enchant you. Maybe take yourself on a little enchantment field trip in your own town. Go to a coffee shop you've never been to. Go to a museum, an art store. Just let yourself wander, find a new trail, and bring some new snack you've never tasted. I don't know, open up some space for yourself to explore.
I love that. Space to explore, new snacks, somewhere new. I always think somewhere new opens, just changes things up. So I love that. So I'm going to take that and do something. And I'll post about it in the Facebook group. So if you are not a member of my Facebook group, which is called Everyday Enchantment, you have to pop over and join so you can hear about, we'll have to see if other members want to participate in that. And then we'll have a good time. We'll share what we're doing. So thank you all for being part of this beautiful episode. Until we meet again, you can check us all out. I'll put all the show notes and all the links and all the things. But it has been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Stacey.
That's it for now, loves. Thank you for tuning into this episode. Get all the juicy details and links we've mentioned in the show notes. If learning more about how you can use your own enchantment to live a oh hell yes life, come get your own coaching session with me by going to staceyandon.com and signing up for my homepage. And as always, come chat with me about this topic and all things enchantment in my Facebook group, Everyday Enchantment. See you on the flip side.